Howdy, it's tubalcain again, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use the HELICOIL to repair a spark plug thread. So here I have an aluminum head off of an old Clinton engine. This is actually an antique, and I have a damaged spark plug hole. And that spark plug is a 14 millimeter. And you can check that with a caliper or with this gauge, and it's 14 millimeter, one of the more common sizes. So I'm going to put a helicoil in there, and a helicoil is just a little repair spiral item, and usually you buy these as a kit, but you might be able to buy them individually if you, or a tube of them. But let's take a look at the kit. This is a genuine helicoil 14 millimeter spark plug thread repair kit, and there are other brands of these, but I think HELICOIL is probably the premier brand, and that is a trade name. But there are other companies, and of course there are many different sizes, and you can buy these as a complete kit, but this is kind of an expensive kit. And in the cover here there's complete instructions on how to use it, and it tells you what comes in the kit, and in the kit is the tap of the appropriate type, and this is not a regular tap, this is a HELICOIL tap. Here's the applicator tool. By the way, it's 14 millimeter, 1.25 millimeter pitch. That's the distance from one thread to the other. And then also in this kit is quite a large assortment of the helicoils themselves in various lengths. And each tube here is a different length, and I'm going to use a much shorter one like this. But they're the same diameter, different lengths. And each tube tells how long it is. The reach really is the length, and I'm using one of the shorter ones here, which is 7/16 reach, which is that one, because in fact if you look at the thread, it's not a very long thread, and I checked it with my ruler, and it's a little bit less than a ½ inch, so I'm using the 7/16 reach. Just to show you that HELICOIL made these in many different sizes, and was the 14 millimeter, but here's a couple other ones. They call it the Master Thread Repair Pack, and that is for 10 millimeter by half spark plug. And there's the inserts and the tool. And this one is Master Thread Repair Pack for 12 millimeter by 1.25 millimeter by ½ inch spark plug. And there's the inserts, the tap, and the applicator tool. Not quite as fancy a package as the first one I showed you. These aren't cheap, but they certainly are cheaper than replacing an entire head. Now this kit is designed really for car engines, but I'm using it on a small engine. But if you're using on a car engine, supposedly you don't have to take the head off, and boy, that would save a lot of work. But you certainly don't want chips to fall into the engine or the combustion chamber, so they recommend putting heavy grease on this that will catch the chips. You don't want chips falling in there. Most of them probably would go out of the exhaust, but you can't count on that. Now most modern cars have aluminum heads, but not all. Now if you do have a cast iron head, you will need to drill it. But aluminum requires no drilling with this kit. Cast iron requires you to drill it 9/16, and that certainly wouldn't be easy to do in an engine compartment, and you might have to take the head off. But I'm really not talking about car engines here. I'm talking about small engines and what you might do on the bench as a small engine mechanic. Let's take a closer look at the HELICOIL tap, and you're going to see that there are two different diameters here, and the smaller diameter is actually the diameter of the spark plug thread itself. So hopefully you got somewhat of a thread in there to get this started. That the thread is not totally stripped out, but you're probably going to run into that case. But that'll allow you to get this started straight. And then as it goes in a little deeper, you're turning it with a tap wrench, or in the case of an engine you might have to use a crescent wrench or an 8-point socket or something. But then there's a small portion here that will do the actual cutting and enlarge the hole a little bit. And then the bigger thread right here is the diameter of the helicoil insert. So let's step over to the bench vise. This Clinton engine head has the spark plug at an angle. Most of your smaller ones are going to be a straight in. But I've already got it started just a little bit. And I put some of this aluminum tap on there. But you need some kind of cutting fluid, or I feel that you do. But this aluminum tap is up to the task. And then you need a relatively large tap wrench in order to fit this square, which is a pretty big square. But you can use a crescent wrench, or an adjustable wrench, or I guess about any kind of wrench. But I like a tap wrench because you're turning from both ends and there's less chances of yanking this off to the side. A square socket with a ratchet is also a good idea. So let's put that on and proceed to cut. It's not cutting yet because I'm using the old thread. And now at this point, and I'm going to put some of this fluid on, and I'm going to be rather generous with it. Make sure that you use the stuff made for aluminum. Don't use the steel tapping fluid, or you will ruin the hole for sure. Turn a little bit and back it off. I know this is really easy at the bench, and it won't be very easy in an engine compartment. I've tapped it down about as far as I can go, and I'll back the tap out now and blow that out. If you were working on an engine, of course, you'd have grease packed in here and be able to withdraw most of the chips, hopefully, because you sure don't want, again, those chips down in the engine. Looking at the tap after I withdrew it, even though I didn't use grease, you can see that certainly most of the chips probably are on the tap. Examining the thread that I just cut, you can see that it did a real nice job. And I have already blown it out, so it's nice and clean. Next, take the applicator tool, and this is pretty annoying, but that handle keeps sliding out and dropping on the floor. But you've got a collar right here with the set screw. So I loosened that up, and it said in the directions to allow about as much thread here as what we have in the head of the engine. Also, if you look at the end of this tool, can you see that little slot? That is the slot that holds the tang. Small thumbs here. It'll be something like that, and that's what drives the tang in. Right there. And the tang, of course, is going to be removed later, and you see that little notch there? That's where it will break off, and it will break it off with a long nose pliers, because you don't want that to drop in the engine. You'd have to take the whole engine apart if you drop that in there, so be careful. be sure and read the directions. Now I've taken the sleeve off, and I'm putting the helicoil of the correct size on there in that little notch that I just showed you. And then we're sliding the whole works into the sleeve, and I'm screwing it in. See it there? And I will screw it into place. Now the helicoil is loaded into the tool. It's in that little notch that I just showed you. Now I'm ready to put the handle on and insert this into the engine head. There's a little bit of space here yet, and that is not real important according to the directions. Notice I'm using Vise jaw protectors here so I don't damage the head itself. Now I've got it started, and I'm going to hold on to the sleeve here as I'm turning this. And we're winding it, they use the term winding it, into the hole. And you need to get it down so it's a little bit below the top surface, because you know how a spark plug seats. And these are never to be used on tapered type of spark plugs. It's for the spark plug that uses a gasket. Now at some point here it's going to pop off of the tool. When it's down to the right depth, then just back the tool off and remove it, and you're done with it. Then examine it. Can you see it? And it's just a little bit below the surface here, so that the spark plug will not interfere with it. There's the start of it right there. From the other side, and I probably could have used a little longer one than the 7/16. Now we have to break the tang off, because you can see that that would interfere with the spark plug itself. Now, using a long nose pliers, needle nose pliers, grab a hold of the tang and break it off. There it is. Don't drop that into the engine. That's waste stock. Now I'm going to treat this old Clinton engine to a new spark plug, because this might be the one that caused the damage in the first place. So there we are with a new champion. Out with the Autolite and in with the champion. Screws in, tighten it up with my spark plug socket, and the job is done, just like downtown. So that's how you repair a spark plug thread with a helicoil kit. Hope you enjoyed this and can put it to good use, and this is tubalcain saying so long for now.